I've had chargers from UnitPackPower that were a little bit sketchy and that were overcharging batteries slightly, right? So I think if you have a UnitPackPower battery charger, that thing could potentially be more dangerous than the battery itself. So that's the main warning that I want to issue in this video that I have not previously issued, is that if you have a UnitPackPower battery charger, make sure that you're not using that thing either, right? But I've had UnitPackPower battery chargers that are charging the battery up like between half a volt to almost a full volt above what they should have been. So what's up, bubbies? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. So tonight we're doing a video in the studio. So every once in a while I like to do a video about one of my favorite things, UnitPackPower. So what is UnitPackPower? Let's go quick introduction, guys. So UnitPackPower, so they make batteries, lithium batteries. Oh, I tried to subscribe to UnitPackPower's mailing list and it couldn't even do it. Even their website's broken. Alright, so UnitPackPower is a company. They make e-bike batteries and just like lithium batteries in general, right? So these batteries, they're just like general purpose. They just get like a general purpose generic case. They put a bunch of cells inside of it, build a battery, slap a BMS on there, solder some wires on it, right? They sell e-bike batteries. And so UnitPackPower is probably one of the most popular e-bike batteries over the last few years, like ever since probably like 2020. Like that's when I got into e-bikes, and like in 2020, that's just what everybody was using, right? If you searched e-bike battery on Amazon over the last 4 years, it was a UnitPackPower battery. So UnitPackPower, they've sold a lot of batteries, right? Very popular over the last 4 years. So it's like everybody has these, right? And so they've been recalled, and we're going to talk more about that, right? About that recall that happened in April of this year by the CPSC. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So they've been recalled, right? But there's still people that are using these batteries, and I'd also like to issue a further warning related to UnitPackPower and their batteries, but not actually the battery itself, right? So we'll talk more about that, right? So let's talk about the recall. So what happened? UnitPackPower, they're selling all these batteries, right? Very popular. They had a good 4 years at least where they had a really good run. Like everybody that's bought an e-bike battery on Amazon, eBay, they probably have one of these, right? UnitPackPower, they're probably selling them under the name of other companies, right? They're probably selling them as other companies. We'll talk more about that theory later in the video. If you see me looking over here, I'm just kind of like looking at, I made an outline for this video, guys, so we're going to try and keep this on the rails, all right? So UnitPackPower, they make these batteries, right? So there was a recall, right? So let's go take a look. So this is April 15th of this year, 2024. CPSC warns consumers to stop using UnitPackPower batteries due to fire and burn hazards. Risk of serious injury and death. Alright, so let's get this up here. Let's get my burning battery imagery back there. Alright. So let's look at this recall. Alright, so this is the battery in question. U004 battery. So, and it's also U0041. Right, so these are the two specific model numbers of the batteries that were recalled. Okay? So they've got some, and this is cpsc.gov. This is the newsroom. So here is a picture from the other side. Alright, so here we can see this is the label that was affixed on the outside of the battery case. So this is showing the U004 48 volt 20 amp hour batteries. And then here's the U004-1. Alright, so this is the 72 volt 19.2 amp hour battery. And I actually disassembled this battery right here in this video. So this video is called Look Inside 72 volt UPP Battery 19.2 Triangle. I did this video October 10th, 2023. So that was last year. I popped this thing open and looked at it. So go check that video out. If you want to look inside of this battery that was recalled. Okay, so let's read this recall. So, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, is issuing this public health and safety notice to warn the public about the risk of serious injury and death with UnitPackPower, also known as UPP, e-bike batteries. The lithium-ion batteries pose fire and burn hazards. CPSC urges consumers to immediately stop using the UPP batteries with model numbers U004 or U004-1. The Commission has found that the public health and safety requires this notice to warn the public quickly of the hazard. This urgent warning comes after 13 people in the United States reported the battery overheated. Okay, so I've experienced that as well, and we'll talk about my personal experiences with these batteries later in the video. And these reports included, so that's including 7 reports of fire and substantial property damage. So probably people with garages, houses, you know, burning down. Batteries reportedly were also involved in multiple fires in the United Kingdom. So I haven't looked at that, so maybe we'll take a look at that. The batteries have not been certified by an accredited laboratory to the applicable UL safety standard to ensure protections. Let's try that again. The batteries have not been certified by an accredited laboratory to the applicable UL safety standard to ensure protections. Okay, so the CPSC is saying that these things need to be certified, UL certified, to ensure protections. So that's kind of interesting because they're saying, well, these things need to be UL certified, but that's not actually like a legal requirement at this point in time. As far as I know. Okay, so the batteries are manufactured by Shenzhen UnitPackPower blah 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 of China, which has refused to conduct an acceptable recall. So UPP, they're saying no, we are not recalling anything. The batteries are black, triangular, sold as batteries to convert pedal bicycles to e-bikes. They have U004 battery or UPP battery printed on the side. These batteries were sold on their brand name UnitPackPower or UPP online. AliExpress, Amazon, DHgate, eBay, Walmart, and other online retailers. So this is starting in 2018 apparently through April 2024. So I didn't come onto the scene until like 2020, so they had been going 2 years before them. So they had a good 6 years selling these batteries on various online marketplaces. So the CPSC is saying consumers should stop use. Consumers should stop use and dispose of the batteries in accordance with any local and state ordinances, following the procedures established by your municipal recycling center for damaged, defective, recall lithium batteries. Because these potentially hazardous batteries must be handled differently than other batteries. Do not throw this battery in the trash. Do not deposit this battery in used battery recycling boxes found at various retail and home improvement stores. CPSC urges consumers to only use products that have been designed, manufactured, and certified for compliance by an accredited laboratory with the applicable consensus safety standards. Consumers should always be present when charging such products. Only charge them with the charger with the e-bike. Only charge them with the charger with the e-battery from the e-bike manufacturer. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, because if you bought a UnitPackPower battery, I wouldn't use the charger either. So we're going to talk more about that. So then it says, never charge batteries for micro-mobility products while sleeping. And then they're saying you can report incidents to the CPSC at saferproducts.gov. You can also report them in my comments section. Let me know your experience with UnitPackPower batteries, if you've ever had any issues. Alright, so that's the recall from the Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC. Right, so one thing to note here is that this recall is specifically for the U004 or the U0041 batteries. So that's these triangular ones right here. So these, I would say that these are probably some of the most popular ones for people that were building do-it-yourself e-bikes and you're buying a battery online. But they are still selling other batteries that aren't these triangle ones. And so one thing that I'm kind of wondering, and let me know, guys, like, have you had problems with these batteries? Because I've had ones and, like, they're not that great, and we'll talk more about my experiences later in the video. But the general experience, like, in a nutshell, it was just like that when the batteries, like, I got some, like, all of the batteries that I got from UnitPackPower, you know, they worked okay for a period of time, but then after a while they began to degrade, and it was just like all of a sudden it just completely stopped working, right? It wasn't like this slowly over time degrading kind of thing. It was just like, it was definitely degrading over time, but then all of a sudden it was just done. And it's not, you know, that's just kind of all of them went out, except I've got one left that's still kind of limping along. It's not doing very good, but it's still my 72 volt one. It's actually this one that got recalled. I still have it. I still have several of these batteries, and my 72 volt one is still limping along. Not very. It's not. It sucks. It's a piece of garbage, but you can still get like 10 amp hours out of it, like half of it. You know, so it's 2 years old at this point. So degraded 50% in 2 years. And it was supposed to have LG cells in it, but we'll talk more about my experience later. All right. So I just wanted to say that it's these triangle ones, right? That were recalled. So let's go look. I haven't seen this. No. Yeah. Okay. So here's gov.uk. So it says OPSS. So what is that? Office for Product Safety and Standards. So it says, this is from the UK government. So it says OPSS. So this is in January. So this is even before the recall occurred in the States from the CPSC. I never even heard about this. Okay, so the OPSS in the UK is taking enforcement action and warning consumers about a dangerous e-bike battery manufactured by a company called UPP. The Office for Product Safety and Standards, OPSS, is taking enforcement action and warning consumers about a brand of e-bike battery, UPP, that has been linked to a number of fires across England. 4 online marketplaces have been issued with withdrawal notices, which require them, in their roles as distributors of the product, to stop supplying the UPP battery. OPSS has also issued a withdrawal notice to 20 sellers directly, and has also issued a withdrawal notice to the China-based manufacturer. Consumers are being advised not to use the battery and contact the seller for further redress. remedy or set right. So consumers are being advised to contact the seller. So let's all contact UnitPackPower and see what they say. Batteries can be disposed of. It says batteries, so they're saying you might be able to dispose of the battery in a local recycling center, but consumers should check first with their local center if they accept this type of battery. So in other words, if they accept dangerous recalled batteries. All right, so this was kind of like a, was this just like a short article about it? So let's see here. So it's like a further, is this a whole report? So let's see, do they say specifically, like, is there anything specific here? I would love to see. What is this? So it says the risk level is serious. Risk type is fire. It says the product presents a serious risk of fire. There is the potential for it to enter into thermal runaway. The product does not meet the requirements of the General Product Safety Regulations 2005. So, I mean, isn't there a potential for all lithium batteries to enter into thermal runaway? I don't know. Alright, so that's the product safety report from the OPSS in England. Alright, so probably one of the most interesting things to me is about this is that they're still selling these things. Like, they're still selling batteries. So we come to UnitPackPower.net. They're still here, right? Their website's still here. Nobody's going to take their website down. But even if I go on, like, Amazon or eBay, like, if I go on Amazon, I can still find UnitPackPower batteries that aren't the triangle ones. So here we are on Amazon. I've searched for UnitPackPower e-bike battery. And here's the results. Look at them all. So we've got UnitPackPower. So we've got these ones and kind of the high. Is this the high long case style right here? So let's go. So we've got batteries right here. There's 50 plus bought in the past month. So that's kind of a big listing right there. But 70 reviews, it seems kind of like, yeah, seems kind of like a new thing. Huh, interesting. This is weird. Look at how all of, like, there's just like 5 reviews and like they're just terrible, and like 6 reviews on this one. So what, this is really weird. Alright, so here's one right here I've got on Amazon. So I mean, they're still selling them. Let's click on the rating. So far so good. Oh boy. So I mean, people are buying these like recently, right? They're still selling them. People are buying them in July. So this guy says excellent value, perfect fit. Man, what about this guy? Terrible. 1-star review. I bought a battery from them and it arrived defective. It was leaking acid from the casing. Huh. So they notified the seller. So the seller gave them a return label to send the leaking battery back. But unfortunately, due to the acid leak and it being a fire hazard, FedEx refused to take it. So I contacted the seller again. They told me to use another FedEx. They asked for a picture. I sent them the picture, again told me to use a different FedEx. Seller then said if I can't send it back, they will give me 10% what I paid for. They were going back and forth trying to not refund me, so I had to bring it to Amazon to get a refund by filing a claim. Alright, so we can see here, you know, this UnitPackPower e-bike battery has, you know, hundreds of ratings, including many of which I've filtered to here, that are very bad ratings, and they're saying dangerous, non-returnable, misleading, the battery stopped working, they refuse to replace it or give me a refund, they're very dishonest. The charger doesn't work right. And by the way, if you have a charger for a UnitPackPower battery, be careful with those things. Like, I've had some of them work and some of them overcharge the battery. I've had multiple UnitPackPower battery chargers that will overcharge your battery. And it was like just by a very small amount, like half a volt or something. But, you know, it was still overcharging the battery. So you can see they're like still selling them. There's tons of bad reviews. People are, their battery arrived damaged, no return policy, right? You know, total crap, da da da. And they also sell them under different company names. So it might say Cham Rider or Chum Rider, or, you know, it might not have a brand name on it. It might just be a battery that's in a blue, you know, plastic wrapped battery without any, you know, brand name. But you know, they're still selling. The point is they're still selling these batteries, even though they've been like recalled and shunned around the world. So I don't know. So should we contact UnitPackPower and we'll say, hey, all right, we're gonna contact UnitPackPower and see what they say about my refunded battery. Well, I don't even know if that worked. Oh, there it is. It says thanks for contacting us. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. So maybe we'll talk to UnitPackPower. And, I mean, it says there's a 2-year warranty. And I bought, like, my battery isn't even 2 full years old. So, that might be a different video where I like, try and get them to honor their 2-year warranty. What's the latest announcement? What does that say? Oh, there isn't one. They've been recalled. So, about us. Like, what is going on here? They say, we are willing to serve you for life. It says, do they have custom batteries? Customizable. But it's a square. It's only a square. So do they still have the triangles? Doesn't seem like they have the triangles anymore. I wonder what was the deal? What was it about those triangle batteries that got recalled? I don't know. Let me know in the comments, guys. That's just like a mystery to me. It's very intriguing, like why those triangle ones got recalled, but then they're still able to sell all these ones. How does that make sense? Right? So, like, do they still have triangle batteries? Like, it's the interesting thing about this to me is that when they issued these recalls, they didn't say specifically like what. I don't know that anybody ever got to like the bottom of it, like what was actually happening that caused it to go into thermal runaway. My guess, from my experience, is that these things, they claimed that they had temperature sensors inside the batteries, and they had, you know, some kind of temperature cutoff. When the temperature would go too hot, it was supposed to cut the battery off so that you can't discharge or charge the battery when it's too hot for the cells to accept the charge. So they claimed in the advertising and the product description on Amazon and all that, they claimed that it had the temperature sensor and some kind of thermal protection that should have prevented, the cells from getting so hot that they went into some kind of thermal runaway situation. But in my experience, and we'll talk more about this later, my experience, I don't think they had any temperature sensor at all. So that might be part of the problem. But in none of these recalls did they say, like, really dig in and like do any detective work and figure out, like, well, this specifically is what was wrong with these batteries, right? So it's I would be interested to know, like, what specifically was wrong. And when I looked inside of it, so this is the video where I ripped this thing open and looked inside of it. So when I ripped it open and I looked at it, it looked kind of just like, so one thing about it was that these BMS, these balancing leads, were all just kind of like all over the place, and they were, they were right next to sharp pieces of nickel strip is what the battery is constructed with. So it's just thin sheets of nickel that have sharp edges, and then they've got all these BMS leads just kind of like jangling right next to sharp pieces of nickel strips. And it's like the construction wasn't the best, and you can see here, like, some people were saying that these were burn marks. When I pulled up this fish paper, like right here under my mouse, you can see there's a little bit of a, like, it looks like a burn mark. I'll get to a different spot. I can't quite. Okay, here we go. So look at this right here. So some people suggested that these marks right here were actually burn marks from these balancing leads for the BMS. Some people were saying that these wires got so hot that these are burn marks. I don't know. I think they might be like friction marks from the wires rubbing. I think it could be from friction and just vibration, and the wires were, they're just in between two pieces of fish paper, smashed into this plastic case, right? I think it could possibly have been from rubbing. Let me know in the comments, what do you think this is from? Was that a burn mark from heat, or is that just like a friction, rubbing mark that we're seeing here? So that was one thing, is the balance leads on the BMS were kind of like questionable. And then is this the positive? Yeah, so then the other thing that was a little bit, they did have insulating rings on the battery cells, but on this positive lead from the battery, you got to be careful that this nickel strip right here doesn't short out on the side of the battery cell. So they do have a piece of fish paper in between the, so it seems okay. I mean, it was okay, but then the cells just weren't very good, right? The battery cells weren't very good. And then some other people said that these pieces of metal aren't actually nickel, and they're steel, nickel-plated steel or something, which isn't as good as nickel, right? So nickel has less resistance and it doesn't rust, whereas sometimes manufacturers, they'll use nickel-plated steel, where it's actually like a steel plate, and then they just plate it with nickel, so it looks like a piece of nickel, but it actually, it's not pure nickel, and it can rust, right? Like if you scratch it, it can rust, and also over time, I think just like the nickel plated steel just isn't as good, right? It's undesirable in a battery. So those are kind of the criticisms that people have about these batteries. And then also my other criticism was just that this BMS is just kind of smushed in there, and then depending on how you have this battery mounted, like if you I've seen some people mount this battery where it's not in the normal orientation, and they'll have it mounted like upwards or something, or like upside down or something, or at some different angle. And if you had this battery mounted in such a way where the weight of these cells was smushing down on the BMS, I can see something potentially happening there. So go check that video out if you want to see what the inside of the battery like actually looks like. It was really interesting opening that up. And so whenever I do a video about UnitPackPower, I always get people that come and show up and they'll say, well, I have a UnitPackPower battery and my battery has always worked fine and I've never had a problem with it, and I've had, 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever. I have them on all my bikes and they work fine, never had a problem, right? And so that can be true, right? But they have been recalled, right, in multiple countries across the world at this point. So there's that, right? And then also, so I can give you my anecdotal experience, right? I've owned 4 UnitPackPower batteries since 2020, and to be fair, right, at first all of them did work fine, right? Like they all worked fine, right? They would now I did have a few chargers from UnitPackPower that, in retrospect, and as I've learned more about batteries over the years, I've had chargers from UnitPackPower that were a little bit sketchy and that were overcharging batteries slightly, right? So I think if you have a UnitPackPower battery charger, that thing could potentially be more dangerous than the battery itself. So that's the main warning that I want to issue in this video that I have not previously issued, is that if you have a UnitPackPower battery charger, make sure that you're not using that thing either, right? You might like, if you're like me, you just have like a whole pile of e-bike battery chargers. You don't remember which one is the UnitPackPower one or which one came, you just have a huge pile of them. But the ones that came with the UnitPackPower batteries were like the metal shell, battery chargers, where it's an aluminum shell on the outside. And they all had fans, right? Like usually if you have a good e-bike battery charger, it doesn't have holes in it and it doesn't have fans. Right, like a good e-bike battery charger isn't gonna have holes, and it should be, like bug proof, right? But a lot of e-bike battery chargers, they just have holes in them, and then they have LED lights inside. And if you have it in your garage, the bugs in the summer are gonna crawl into your e-bike charger. And little bugs can short out, on the circuit boards in between, the conductors on a circuit board. Little bugs get stuck in there and they short out, and stuff can happen, right? Or the chargers can rust, like the inside, the electrical, conductors inside the chargers can rust. Things can happen with both the batteries and the chargers. So just make sure if you have the battery, be careful with it. Probably don't use it. I don't know what to tell you as far as disposing it, right? But you can't just, like the recall said, you can't just dispose it at any normal battery disposable place, because it's like a dangerous recalled battery, right? So my experience in general is like they do work okay for a while, but then the main thing is like after a period of time, they begin to degrade, and it's usually like a year, or like going past the year, like between year 1 and 2, kind of like their general like return, or their general like warranty length, right, is about how, like, it was like the battery would die kind of like around what their warranty was, a little bit after that, like almost like it was intentional or something. I don't know. It was like they knew how long they were going to last, and it was just like slightly beyond the warranty. I would say that the UnitPackPower batteries, all of them, they degraded much faster than if you would have had a battery that was constructed with like quality brand name genuine cells. Like that's how it seemed to me. Because my first e-bike that I ever bought was an Aventon, and it had a good battery with Samsung cells in it, and that thing to this day is still working great, right? But all of these janky, junky UnitPackPower recalled batteries that I've had, they went bad in like a year, or like 2 years, like clockwork, right? And some of the chargers were sketchy, so be careful. And then like, so over time, if you're still using a UnitPackPower battery, over time, like they'll start to degrade, right? And it's not just the capacity of the battery, like you don't get as much range, right? It's more than that. Like the cells, the battery cells themselves inside of the battery start to degrade. And not only do they not, you can't charge them up as much, they don't discharge as much, you don't get as much range or capacity, but also they start to get hot. Like when you're using the battery and you're discharging from it, the battery cells, like as they degrade and you're using those battery cells over time, like they get hotter and hotter and hotter, right? And so after a while, a couple years, if you're using one of these batteries, you might notice that like as you're using it, and then right after you use it, if you touch it, it might feel kind of warm, or even like, you know, depending on the ambient temperature, it might feel hot. I've had times where I touch the side of the battery case, and there's multiple layers of, the battery cells themselves has a shrink wrap, and then fish paper, and then they're inside of, sometimes there's foam inside the case, and then there's the plastic hard shell cover case, right? And so sometimes I would be touching the side of the plastic on the side of the case on the outside of the e-bike battery that was exposed to air while I was riding, and I would touch the side of the battery, and like it was hot to where like I couldn't keep my hand on it for 5 seconds. So it wasn't like, it wasn't like crazy hot, but it was like sketchy hot, right? And I don't, like I said, I don't think there's any temperature protection in these batteries at all. These triangle ones, I don't think there was ever any temperature sensor. I never found a temperature sensor in them, right? I would have to look closer at the BMS. Maybe there's a temperature sensor that was just on the circuit board of the BMS, but there was definitely no temperature sensor that was, like a actual thermistor with like wires going off and the temperature sensor like touching battery cells. There's nothing like that, right? No temperature sensor anywhere near the cells. Like I tore all the paper off, I looked at all the cells. No temperature sensor in the cells. There may have been one like in the BMS, but I mean that's not, that's pointless. Like you gotta have one on the cells to, So if you still have a UnitPackPower battery, be careful with it. When you get back from a ride, feel it. If it feels hot, wait until it cools down to charge it. I've had times where I get back from a ride, it feels way too hot, and it takes like hours for the thing to cool down, like a hot coal. Okay, so after a while, like you gotta keep an eye on those things, because they start to get hot, and it's like a hot coal. Like you can have that thing, bring it into the air conditioning, and it's like a hot coal for like a couple hours. And if you put that thing on a charger and start charging that when it's hot, that's my guess. That's how these fires started, where people, reported it to the CPSC, right? And that's how the recall happened, and all those fires happened. It's probably over time degraded battery started getting hotter, no temperature protection. People just got back from a ride, it was hot, they threw it on the charger, started charging it, it got hotter, boom, right? Fire. Okay, so be careful. If you have one, be careful with it. Make sure it's not getting too hot. If you have a charger, see what voltage it charges the battery up to. Like after you charge the battery and it's full, take it off the charger, get a voltmeter. You can get one at a hardware store, $10, $15. Put a voltmeter in the, in the battery leads. Don't touch it together, short it out. Don't want to do that. Red to red, black to black. See the voltage of the battery when it's fully charged after the charger's done. You might have to let it sit for a few minutes after it's done charging, like even overnight or something. Just see, charge it up full, then kind of let it rest, take it off the charger, and then stick a voltmeter in there. Let it sit overnight. Then the next day, stick a voltmeter in there and see what it charged up to, right? Depending on the voltage of the battery, 48 volt lithium battery should charge up to 54.6 volts, right? If it's just a little bit higher than that, like point something, just a small amount, that's fine. It might just be a fresh new battery that charges up a little, little more than nominal. But I've had UnitPackPower battery chargers that are charging the battery up like between half a volt to almost a full volt above what they should have been. So they're overcharging the battery cells, charging them beyond what they should have been. And I never had a fire, right? My main problem with these batteries was usually that the BMS would just break and stop working. And so I was able to, as one example, I had a BMS where I think it got water damage, or like it had some crusty stuff on it or something. And it was like, it just stopped working, but I disconnected the discharge. Like I bypassed the discharge of the BMS, and the cells of the battery were still working. Like, so something was up with the BMS just on like the discharge portion of the BMS, but I was still able to charge the battery, and it was hooked up to the BMS and charging it through the BMS just fine. But for some reason I couldn't discharge the battery through the BMS. It was a weird thing. Okay, but so I would say I had 4 of these batteries. They all died in less than 2 years, basically, or they didn't die, but they just degraded after like a year or 2 years. They'll just degrade so rapidly, just like all of a sudden, and you'll be getting like half as much range as you were. And then it weighs so much, like the e-bike battery, it has so many cells in it, and it's so huge, and it weighs so much that it's just like lugging around a whole bunch of stuff that you don't need. It's like dead weight when you have a battery that's just like huge and heavy, but it's only giving you half of the capacity that it originally was. It's just like you can't even get halfway as far as you used to. It's like you gotta throw that thing away, right? Even though it still like has some capacity, if you can only discharge 500 watts out of it and your e-bike needs 1,000, like you can't even use that battery anymore, right? So I never had like some catastrophic problem. I had to fix some of them and repair some of them. I never had like a fire or any catastrophic problem, but they were getting dangerously hot. And that's my main warning. It's like, be careful with these things. Don't charge it if it's hot. I wouldn't use the chargers at all that came with the UnitPackPower battery, because it seems like most of these problems happen when you're charging them, right? So yeah, that's just my update on UnitPackPower batteries. I want to talk about it a little bit more. It's always fun. Leave a comment about UnitPackPower batteries. Are you still using one like me? Right? You still using a UnitPackPower battery? I've still got one that's limping along. I use it once in a while, but in general, I try not to. And I also I think I've got 1 or 2 UnitPackPower batteries, or UnitPackPower chargers, that are just like overcharging batteries. So I'm gonna say, don't use the batteries, don't use the chargers, right? Buy batteries with good quality cells in them and good manufacturing process. It's kind of a tumultuous time for e-bike batteries. I don't have any suggestions for you as far as batteries go. I buy the cells and I build them myself, and I don't recommend that you do it. I recommend that you have somebody that knows what they're doing professionally. You know, buys the cells, welds them all together, hooks the BMS on, hooks the, you know, solders the wires on, you know, in such a way where it's built where nothing bad is going to happen as the battery is strapped on your bicycle, bouncing down the road like violently on a vehicle that you're riding at high rates of speed. Okay, so just think about what you're doing. Be safe. Don't be like me. You know, be smart about it. Buy a good battery. Alright, do as I say, not as I do. That's my warning about UnitPackPower batteries. Let's talk more about it in the comments. Isn't it incredible that they're still selling these things on Amazon? It blows my mind. It's like they get recalled in multiple countries across the world, but it's just this triangle one. What's up with that? Like, what was it about these triangle ones? The U004 and the U0041. What was the deal with these? Why did just the triangle ones get recalled? Let's talk about it in the comments, guys. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Peace out.